Hello and welcome to another marvellous video. I'm Simon Candlish and today we will be rating dragons. Many fans are considering the influence made by the Targaryen dynasty's dragons now that the first season of House of the Dragon is firmly in the rearview mirror. Many of the flying creatures were first presented to viewers in House of the Dragon, and with the Dance of the Dragon rapidly approaching, their power is more important than ever. Balerion the Black Dread, whose enormous skull is usually seen underneath the Red Keep, was the most terrifying dragon to ever dominate the sky for many years. However, the pecking order among Westeros' fierce dragons has changed since that era's conclusion many years ago. So stick with us and find out where your favourite dragon ends up on our list. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. In at number 1, it's Vhagar, the most enormous dragon known to man. He's the most feared beast in all of Westeros. Vhagar is well over a century old and was one of the 3 dragons that Aegon the Conqueror employed to conquer the 7 kingdoms. Compared to other dragons shown in the first season of House of the Dragon, he is significantly older. Many wars, notably Aegon's Conquest, the First Dornish War, and the Faith Militant Uprising, and the Four Dornish War, were won using Vhagar. During the War of the Conquest, Aegon's sister wife, Visenya, piloted Vhagar. She was one of the 3 dragons present in the Field of Fire, the crucial battle over the conquest that established Targaryen control over the 7 kingdoms. Prince Balon the Brave Targaryen, the Lady Laena Velaryon, and now Prince Aemond, One-Eye Targaryen, rode him after Aegon. At Storm's End, we last saw her devour Arrax and Prince Lucerys in the Season 1 finale of House of the Dragon. None of Vhagar's colours, not even her flame, are expressly stated at first. She was already a large and fierce dragon during the War of the Conquest. Vhagar was one of the biggest dragons in existence by the time of the Dance of the Dragons and the passing of Balerion and Meraxes. Only Vermithor, the Bronze Fury, came close to matching her size. According to reports, she was as large as Balerion himself. Despite Vhagar being a seasoned and merciless survivor of 100 fights, it is stated that Meleys was one of the few dragons that could stand up to him in a fight. Later on, it is revealed that Vhagar had bronze skin with greenish-blue highlights and a pair of green eyes. Even for a dragon, Vhagar was a destructive, combative, and hostile being her whole life. One of the most terrifying of her kind, it is said that in her prime, her roar shook Storm's End's very foundations. Vhagar was approximately 200 years old, but she was noticeably unfazed by her advanced age and could compete with someone like Caraxes. As deadly as Balerion and Meraxes, and as dreadful as any dragon who would ever replace her, Visenya herself acknowledged that Vhagar, combative beast. In at number 2, Caraxes. During the first season of House of the Dragon, the dragon Caraxes gets a lot of screen time. Caraxes, as Daemon Targaryen's companion, play an essential role in the series' plot, particularly when it ravages the Triarchy armies at the Stepstones. He is a war veteran known as the Blood Worm due to his red scales. Although Caraxes gained valuable battle experience while working with Daemon in the Stepstones, it had previously participated in several fights while under the command of Aemon Targaryen, Rhaenys' father. This, along with its massive size and aggressive disposition, makes the serpent-like dragon one of the franchise's most fearsome foes. Caraxes was bright crimson, massive and slender. He was terrible, dangerous and experienced in war. Caraxes was about half the size of the gigantic Vhagar during the Dance of the Dragons. However, Meleys outpaced both Caraxes and Vhagar. Caraxes' first rider was Aemon Targaryen, Prince of Dragonstone and King Jaehaerys I's eldest son. The Dragon Keepers, King Jaehaerys' order of guards, formed to safeguard the freshly built dragon pit, gave him his moniker. During the 4th Dornish War, Prince Aemon on Caraxes, King Jaehaerys on Vermithor, and Prince Balon, Aemon's younger brother, on Vhagar, attacked the Dornish fleet and annihilated it without a single loss. Later, when a Myrish pirate attack forced the Evenstar's path, Caraxes would travel to Tarth with Aemon. However, Caraxes' flames alerted the Myrish to the Westerosi camp, and a crossbowman fired at the Evenstar but missed and struck Aemon in the place of the Evenstar. Caraxes was left without a rider as the Prince of Dragonstone passed away from the wound, and Daemon Targaryen, the younger son of Aemon's brother Balon, eventually claimed him. We last see Caraxes in the final episode of Season 1, where Sir Laurent Marbrand and Sir Steffon Darklyn of the Kingsguard are intimidated and reminded of their oaths by Caraxes, which Daemon summons to Dragonstone. Number 3. Vermithor. Few historical dragons have matched Vermithor, the Bronze Fury's sheer might. Vermithor, who was born over 100 years before the course of the story, was originally King Jaehaerys Targaryen I's mount. However, the dragon has been riderless in the depths of Dragonstone for some decades since his death. Vermithor had huge tan wings and was a bronze dragon. In 48 AC, Vermithor was already a giant dragon, only Balerion and Vhagar were larger. Vermithor was about 100 years old at the time of the Dance of the Dragons. Vermithor was a terrifying beast, accustomed to humanity and having had a prior rider. Targaryen Vermithor was more accommodating of new riders during the reign of Aegon II Targaryen. Vermithor frequently coiled with Silverwing. He was about 100 years old at the time of the Dance of the Dragons, and because of his size, he wasn't as agile in the air as some of the smaller, younger dragons. At the height of his might, his flame burned steel and stone. Vermithor, unlike his wild sisters, was used to men and tolerated their existence. But when roused, he was a frightened dragon who poured down hell on the armies he battled during the dance. Maesters observed that during his last battle with Tessarion and Seasmoke, the latter was no match for him, and Vermithor would have easily won the contest if only those two had been present. During the Civil War, when Jacaerys Valerian determined that the Blacks required additional dragon riders, many warriors stepped up to meet the prince's call. Lord Gorman Macy was burnt to death while researching Vermithor due to this. During the Civil War, the dragon eventually bowed his neck to a blacksmith's bastard named Hugh Hammer and was ridden by him. The riderless Vermithor soared into the air during the Second Battle of Tumbleton and was assaulted from above by the Soul Dragon with a rider, Seasmoke. Vermithor was only about 20 feet above the combat when Seasmoke crashed into him from above, screeching him into the mud. The riderless Blue Queen quickly joined the conflict, and all three died on the ground in dirt, blood, and smoke. Vermithor murdered Seasmoke by locking his fangs into his neck and ripping his head off. He attempted to fly while holding his prey in his jaws, but his damaged wings couldn't support his weight. He slumped and died within a brief period. Number 4. Meleys. Meleys and Rhaenys Targaryen are two of the most adored characters from the first season of House of the Dragon. Many fans will be pleased to learn that Meleys is among the strongest dragons in Westeros. Given its imposing proportions, it seems likely that Meleys, often known as the Red Queen, was born decades before King Viserys Targaryen. During the reign of King Jaehaerys I, the Red Queen co-ruled the sky with Vhagar and Caraxes. According to Westerosi Chronicles, Meleys quickly outperformed her two companions. Thus, it should do quite well against the dragons of the present. Meleys was known as the Red Queen because of the red scales and pink membranes on her wings. The horns, claws, and crest were all as brilliant as copper. Meleys, who easily flew out Caraxes and Vhagar, was regarded as one of Westeros' fast dragons in the 75 AC. Meleys was experiencing combat, aged and clever. Meleys had become complacent by 129 AC, yet he was still terrifying when roused. Rhaenys flew Meleys to the castle to provide assistance when Sir Criston Cole's soldiers besieged Rook's Rest. Iron bolts from Cole's soldiers struck Meleys, infuriating her but doing no harm. She spewed fire on the soldiers below in retaliation. Meleys engaged Sunfire and Vhagar in aerial combats when they showed up above Rook's Rest. Meleys could have had a chance versus the more seasoned Vhagar alone, but not with both Vhagar and Sunfire. Before Vhagar pounced on them, Meleys was able to clamp her mouth around Sunfire's neck. The three dragons then plummeted to the ground a half-league away from Rook's Rest. Meleys' body was torn to bits and she did not survive the fall. The troops of King Aegon II Targaryen took Meleys' head back to King's Landing and drove it around the city on a cart, frightening the locals into silence. In at number 5, it's Syrax. Syrax, another dragon, born quite close to the events of the House of the Dragon, serves as Rhaenyra's mount. The yellow-scaled beast was a juvenile dragon when Princess Rhaenyra claimed it, making it roughly 3 decades old during the events of House of the Dragon. Syrax is well known for being significantly bigger and more powerful than other dragons her age. While this does not compensate for its youth, it does lessen the gap between it and the Seven Kingdoms' elder dragons. Syrax's scales were yellow, she was massive and a formidable, but lacked Caraxes' fearsome and war experience. She was chained and exceptionally well fed. During the Civil War, she hadn't hunted in years. Rhaenyra used Syrax as a mount when she was 7 years old in 104 AC. Syrax was characterized as a young dragon at the time, and Rhaenyra called her Syrax after a Valyrian goddess, meaning that Syrax had never been ridden before. Syrax was killed in the wake of the Dragon Pit storming. Prince Joffrey had tried to saddle her in order to go to the Dragon Pit, save the other dragons, and maybe mount his own dragon dragon Tyraxes there. Cyrax shook off Joffrey, who crashed to his death in mid-flight. After this, Cyrax moved to the dragon pit, drawn by the slaughter. Cyrax could have stayed high in the air and made runs at the mob with her flames, but instead, she plummeted to the ground, murdering hundreds with tooth and claw. There are several contradictory tales of how Cyrax died. What is clear is that Cyrax perished in the struggle against the protesters. So number 6, we've got Sunfire. Sunfire the Golden, Aegon II's dragon, was possibly the most magnificent dragon ever to soar the skies above Westeros, if not the entire planet. Sunfire was lovely dragon with gold scales and soft pink wing membranes. His scales glistened like hammered gold in the sunshine. Sunfire was a ferocious and mighty warrior, but at the end of his life, he was practically terrified of the conflicts he'd fought. Aegon Targaryen II is many things, but he is not a good dragon rider. As a result, it's hardly unexpected that Sunfire, his royal dragon, doesn't pose as much of a menace as its Targaryen-ridden counterparts. Sunfire, born somewhere during the first few episodes of House of the Dragon, is little compared to the elder dragons seen in Westeros. Sunfire soared over King's Landing 3 times after Aegon came to the Iron Throne. Sunfire was honored by the Golden Dragon on Aegon's arms. Sunfire was injured during the Dance of the Dragons during the Battle of Rook's Rest, and he and Vhagar killed Rhaenys Targaryen and her dragon Melis. Sir Criston Cole had livestock brought to him while he lay recovering after one of his wings was nearly severed from his body. The wing mended at an unnatural angle, and he'd never fly the same way again. Sunfire scorched Lord Wallace Mouton's attackers as he attempted to slay the injured dragon. Sunfire battled, killed, and ate the wild dragon Grey Ghost on his way back to Dragonstone, either for Aegon or because it was his birthplace. He was left with just one eye and wound on his back, belly, and neck due to the struggle. When it comes to Dance of the Dragon, the Greens are often seen as the antagonists. Therefore, what Sunfire accomplished is not diminished. He had several bouts and killed many opponents. He could have been much stronger if he had lived longer, but that was not to be. Sunfire refused to eat and perished due to his injuries, which rendered him unable to fly. There might have been foul play involved, but that's a topic for another time. Number 7 is Dreamfire. Helaena Targaryen may not be the most commanding presence in the royal household, but her she-dragon, Dreamfire, is not to be underestimated. The slim she-dragon was born during the reign of Aegon the Conqueror, making her nearly as old as the Targaryen dynasty itself. She was initially the mount of Rhaena Targaryen, the old king's sister. Dreamfire was a little dragon. Her skin was mostly pale blue with silver patterns. Her crests were silver and her wings were pale blue. Dreamfire had grown large enough by 35 AC for Rhaena Targaryen to saddle her. Dreamfire and Helena's lack of fighting experience might work against them when they face up against other dragon-riding partners, but Dreamfire is undoubtedly huge enough to defend itself against the bulk of Westeros' other winged monsters due to its age. Dreamfire was kept in the dragon pit as a stable after her 6-year-old son was killed during the Civil War. Queen Helaena Targaryen spent her days in darkness, mourning and unable to ride her dragon. She finally went insane from sadness and hurled herself out of a window in Maegor's Holdfast, where she died. Dreamfire erupted with a yell that rocked the dragon pit and severed 2 of the chains that tied her upon the queen's death. The 4 dragons lairing beneath the dome were chained during the storming of the dragon pit. When the crowd stormed in, Dreamfire was the lone dragon that managed to flee. She broke free from her remaining ties and took flight. She circled the dome's vast interior before swooping down to assault the soldiers below. She killed more men than the other 3 dragons put together. The rabble surged through her attacks, leaving her vulnerable to archers and crossbowmen. Men gathered to assault her whenever she lit, forcing her back into the air. A crossbow bolt eventually nicked one of her eyes. Dreamfire, half blind and insane, soared towards the dragon pit's enormous dome above. On impact, the already damaged dome fractured and half of it collapsed, trapping and killing her and the dragon slayers beneath tons of broken stone and rubble. Number 8, it's Seasmoke. Seasmoke was a dragon ridden by Sir Laenor Velaryon, and afterwards by Adam of Hull, the Dragon Sea. Seasmoke is a silver-grey dragon with light skin. He is still young at the time of the war for the Stepstones, but he is a quick flyer in the skies. Whereas the young dragons of Westeros merely hint at the actual strength of old Valyria, more adult dragons like Seasmoke show off their devastating skills. Seasmoke was born at the same time as Laenor Velaryon. Therefore, the dragon is at least a few decades old after the House of the Dragon's time jump. Few live dragons, especially those bred during the events of the show, have as much war experience as Sea Smoke. Although Lena is no longer around to ride the dragon, the war in the Stepstones prepared it for future battles. In the TV series, during the War for the Stepstones, Lena rides Sea Smoke into battle. He is instrumental in bringing the siege of Bloodstone to an end, saving Daemon Targaryen when the prince is wounded and encircled by Triarchy soldiers. On the day of his wedding to Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, Laenor mounts Sea Smoke toward King's Landing. Rhaenys, his mother, rides the dragon Melis with him. During Laena Velarion's burial, Sea Smoke and several other dragons remain at high tide. Sea Smoke is left riderless after Laenor fakes his own death and flees into exile, and he continues to stay on Driftmark. Number 9, it's Vermax. Jacaerys Velaryon, Vermax's rider, is the brother of Lucerys Velaryon, Arrax's rider. As a result, it's only natural for the two dragons to have certain similarities. Both were given to their riders at birth, albeit the age difference between Jacaerys and Lucerys means that Vermax is slightly older and larger than its counterpart. In the series, when viewers first encounter Vermax, he's introduced to Jacaerys for training in King's Landing Dragon Pit. When it reappears, it has definitely outgrown Arrax in terms of size. Unfortunately, it is still far smaller than most of its Westerosi counterparts. Vermax was big enough to ride by the time the Dance of the Dragons began. As a messenger for his mother, Queen Rhaenyra Targaryen, Prince Jacaerys travelled north on his back to meet with Desmond Manderley, Lord of White Harbour, Jane Arryn, Lady of Erie, and Cregan Stark, Lord of Winterfell. The expedition was successful since all three expressed their support for Rhaenyra and her Blacks. During the Battle of the Gullet, Prince Jacaerys utilized Vermax. Vermax assaulted a fleet there, but he flew too low and crashed into the water. There are several stories about how and why the dragon fell. Number 10, the Cannibal. During the Dance of the Dragons, a wild dragon named the Cannibal resided on Dragonstone. Its name was given by the locals of Dragonstone for a clear motive. He would eat dragon eggs and their young, dead or alive. He and the other two untamed dragons, Sheepstealer and Grey Ghost, lived on Dragonstone. The cannibal's skin was as black as coal. He was the biggest and oldest wild dragon. He was known to visit Dragonstone's hatcheries and gore himself on baby hatchlings and eggs. Smaller dragons were known to be attacked by the cannibal. He lay in the shadows of Dragonmont. A dozen would-be dragon tamers had attempted to ride him before the Dance of the Dragon, and his lair was strewn with their bones. When Prince Jacaerys Velaryon summoned dragon riders for the Dance of the Dragon, none of the dragon seeds dared to disturb the cannibal owing to his notoriety, and those who tried did not return to tell the tale. When Silver Dennis, a descendant of King Maegor I Targaryen, attempted to control Sheepstealer, the dragon tore off his arm. The cannibal arrived on them, drove off Sheepstealer, and devoured Silver Dennis and his sons, while his sons attempted to bandage his wounds. Archmaester Gildane's Civil War Chronicle includes no mention of the cannibal dying at the Dance of the Dragons, implying that he lived. Number 11, it's Silverwing. Silverwing was the dragon owned by Queen Alysanne Targaryen, Jaehaerys' sister wife and friend of Vermithor. At least by dragon standards, Silverwing was seen as friendlier and more docile than Vermithor. Although it has never been specifically mentioned, we can only presume that Silverwing was a silvery tint based on its name. When Queen Alysanne learnt of their courage and splendor, she rode Silverwing to the wall. At one of the several castles that were still inhabited at the time, but have long since been deserted, a fortress named Snowgate, she came on her dragon. The Night's Watch were pleased with the queen and her dragon, who were exceedingly respectful and valued guests. As a result, the castle was given the name Queensgate to honor her visit. After Queen Alysanne's death, the dragon resisted being ridden and stayed in a semi-wild form for many years before being retamed by Ulf the White, the dragon seed, and one of the two betrayers. During the Second Battle of Tumbleton, she observed the carnage from above and saw the deaths of her relatives Vermithor, Seasmoke, and Tizarian, while her rider was unconscious in a pub. She reportedly attempted to wake up Bronze Fury in vain as she saw near the dead Vermithor after the fight. Lord Unwin Peake offered land and wealth to anybody of noble birth who could tame her, but no one was able to do so. She was one of only 3 dragons known to have survived the dance, along with Cannibal and Sheepstealer. After the war, she passed away a while later. Number 12, Grey Ghost. Grey Ghost was a feral dragon who lived in a smoking vent, high on the lonely eastern flank of the Dragonmont volcano. Dragonstone's small folk, who couldn't seem to find him, gave him that moniker. No one, living or dead, ever claimed or rode him. He is one of the 3 dragons who were wild, the other 2 being Sheepstealer and the Cannibal. He was the hue of the morning mist, a a delicate grey-white. He was a bashful dragon that avoided humans and their work for long periods. He liked to eat fish and could frequently be seen swooping low over the narrow sea, grabbing food from the water. Prince Jacaerys Velaryon recruited more dragon riders to battle the Greens at the Dance of the Dragons. Due to his constant evasion, several dragon seeds searched for the Grey Ghost but were unsuccessful. Before attempting and failing to claim Sheepstealer, Alan of Hull initially sought out Grey Ghost. The crew of the Nassaria saw a battle between a dragon and the Grey Ghost in the skies above the Dragonmont in 130 AC. The fighting resulted in the death of Grey Ghost. When he learned of Grey Ghost's passing, Sir Robert Quince mistakenly assumed that the cannibal was to blame. In actuality, when Sunfire reached Dragonstone, he defeated Grey Ghost and half-consumed him. Number 13. Sheepstealer. Sheepstealer is one of the few dragons who survived the Dance of the Dragon and retreat into obscurity. He was a hideous mud brown and was hatched while the old king was young, making him roughly 80 years old during the Civil War. During the Dance of the Dragons, Sheepstealer was a wild dragon with a penchant for mutton. It dwelt behind Dragonmount and hunted between Driftmark and Wendwater. The Dragonstone smallfolk gave his name for obvious reasons. He is one of the 3 wild dragons, the other one being Cannibal and Grey Ghost. Sheepstealer lived in the Dragonmont caves on Dragonstone and hunted sheep as far away as Driftmark and Wendwater. When King Jaehaerys I Targaryen was still young, Sheepstealer's dragon egg hatched. Sheepstealer went unclaimed by any rider throughout his youth, making him more used to the presence of mankind and more difficult to claim with each passing year. He eventually spent almost 7 decades on Dragonstone, stealing sheep from farms across Blackwater Bay. During the Dance of the Dragons, Jacaerys Velaryon summoned dragon riders. Silver Dennis, a man claiming to be a descendant of King Maegor, attempted to control the dragons. Sheepstealer severed the man's arm but was chased away by the cannibal before completing Silver. Sheepstealer destroyed more seeds during the taming than the other 2 wild dragons combined. Alan of Hull attempted to tame him but earned a charred cloak as punishment. Every morning, a bastard girl named Nettie tamed him by feeding him a sheep. Nettles was permitted to depart when Rhaenyra Targaryen labelled him a traitor for sleeping with Daemon Targaryen. They were never seen or heard from again. Number 14. Moondancer. Lady Baela Targaryen rode Moondancer, a useful she-dragon. She was a thin pale green dragon. Her horns, crest and wings bones were all white as pearl. At the start of the Dance of the Dragons, she was thought to be too little to support the weight of Baela Targaryen. She was scarily bigger than a warhorse and weighed less as she flew up with Baela to meet Aegon II and Sunflyer, but she was incredibly fast. She might have hatched from Syrax's batch of eggs. As Dragonstone fell to Aegon II at the Civil War's close, Baela could flee her bedchambers as the door was being smashed down. She eventually tracked down Moondancer in the stable where the palace dragons were housed. She let go of her shackles and fastened a saddle on her. As Aegon II flew Sunfire above Dragonsmount Flaming Summit, Baela on Moondancer rose to meet him. The 2 dragons fought violently in the air before collapsing and smashing into the hard stone, continuing battling. Moondancer's speed was useless against Sunfire's bulk and weight, and the green dragon quickly fell silent. When the dragons were 20 feet above the earth, King Aegon sprang off the saddle, but Lady Baela stayed with her dragon wall the entire way down. Despite her injuries, Baela could unhook Moondancer's saddle and shackles and crawl away as her dragon curled into her death throes. Sunfire ultimately swallowed Moondancer. Nevertheless, Moondancer had fatally wounded her opponent. Sunfire died in the last month of the year due to combat wounds. Number 15. Caraxesjajaajj. During the Dance of the Dragon, Caraxesjajaajj was the dragon chained to Prince Joffrey Velaryon. Caraxesjajaajj was still a juvenile male dragon at the outset of the Dance of the Dragons, unable to fight yet capable of flying vast distances. Caraxesjajaajj thrived and grew larger with each passing year. He was somewhat smaller than Vermax and Arax. Joffrey asked his mother to allow him to ride to battle on Caraxesjajaajj, but she refused. This was shown in the episode titled Fire and Blood. Later in the conflict, Jacaerys sent Joffrey and their cousin Rhaena of Pentos to the Vale of Arryn to be wards of Jane Arryn, Lady of the Eyrie. Joffrey and Rhaena flew on Caraxesjajaajj from Dragonstone to Gulltown, then to the Eyrie. Rhaenyra recalled Joffrey, who flew back to the capital with Caraxesjajaajj after capturing King's Landing from the Greens. Caraxesjajaajj built his home in the Dragon Pit during their stay in the city, where he escaped during the riots as would-be dragon slayers went after him. Caraxesjajaajj's fire killed so many people that the bodies eventually blocked the front entrance to his lair. The crowd then entered through the rear entrance, which perplexed Caraxesjajaajj. Caraxesjajaajj was claimed to be slain by several men and one lady, but in reality he eventually strangles himself with his own chains. The shepherd's disciples chopped off the membrane of his wings after his death to fashion dragon skin cloaks. Number 16. Tessarion. Tessarion was 1/3 of the size of the biggest living dragon, Vhagar. Daeron Targaryen, the youngest son of Dowager Queen Alicent Hightower and the late King Viserys I Targaryen, rode her. Although we haven't seen Daeron yet, Season 2 is expected to introduce us to the youngest Hightower, Targaryen, and his dragon. The blue she-dragon, Tessarion, was a stunning creature. Her claws, crest, and belly scales were the color of brightly pounded copper, while her wings were deep cobalt. Cobalt blue was the hue of her flames as well. Tessarion had bonded with Prince Daeron Targaryen by 120 AC. Though Daeron had not yet ridden him, Daeron had become a dragon rider in 129 AC, despite being unknown when he first piloted Tessarion. She was younger than Sunfire, Dreamfire, and Vhagar during the Dance of the Dragons, since she was the youngest dragon of fighting weight that belonged to Aegon II Targaryen's followers. Tessarion was 1/3 the size of Vermithor by 130 AC, though he was a young dragon at the time but very agile in the air. To save Lord Ormond Hightower, Daeron rode Tessarion into the battle on the Honeywind in the Reach. Their entrance was decisive in the conflict. In the Second Battle of Tumbleton, Tessarion fought with Adam Velaryon and Seasmoke. The Blue Queen, wounded in the battle, writhed in agony and on the ground until dusk. Tessarion was killed by 3 arrows released by Billy Burley under the orders of Lord Benjicott Blackwood. And number 17, last but not least, it's Arrax. Arrax is an obvious choice for the weakest dragon in House of the Dragon because he is the youngest. The young dragon was between 10 and 15 years old, having been created not longer after its rider, Lucerys Velaryon. Arrax is a little fish in a big ocean compared to elder dragons like Vhagar and Meleys. The hue of Arrax is not specified in the extant writings. However, Sam Hogg, the artist commissioned for the 2021 A Song of Ice and Fire calendar, sought George R.R. Martin's staff for clarification and was told that Arrax's colouring was pearlescent white with a yellow flame, golden eyes, and a golden breast. He was mature enough to ride at the start of the dance, but still young and developing. He was 5 times smaller than Vhagar. Arrax's size makes it one of the show's most agile monsters, as proven by the chase sequence between Lucerys and Aemond at the end of House of the Dragon. However, it had little chance against Westeros's greater dragons, as evidenced by its demise at the hands of Aemond and his giant dragon, Vhagar. Marvelous verdict. That brings an end to this exhaustive list. There are still plenty of dragons that we haven't touched on yet. If you want to know more about them, let us know in the comments and we will make part 2 of this video. Also, let us know at which number did your favorite dragon end up. And if you enjoyed this video, click on the like button and I'll see you in the next one.